Have you ever faced a problem in your life that all the people around you, all the wealthy ones, couldn't do a thing about? But then, suddenly, a poor girl, a person with empty hands, turns out to be the one who can untangle the knot and solve the problem. Yes, sometimes poor people can come to your aid far more than those with full pockets. If you want to believe this, you have to listen to the fascinating story of my life to understand how I, a poor girl, was able to help a very rich man escape a huge problem while all the rich people around him, with all their money, couldn't do a damn thing. That man was Henry. He is 35 years old, a fully rich man who owns a car dealership. His business is buying and selling luxury cars. I am 30 years old and a street vendor. I live with my mother. We have no one else in this world. What is my job? I sell lighters. I sell lighters every day. Recently, I decided to change my workplace. I set up my stall right in front of Henry's showroom because this is an affluent uptown area. Perhaps I could find better customers. It was during those first days that I saw Henry for the first time. The showroom had closed. It was getting dark. Suddenly, I saw Henry coming out of the showroom door. He is tall and well-built. He has a captivating and stunning face that makes you want to stare at him for hours. He walked towards his expensive and cool car, got in, and drove off toward his home. That one look was enough. Yes, I fell in love with him at first sight. I was mesmerized by his beauty and charm. Haven't you ever believed in love at first sight? Well, maybe if you saw Henry, you would change your mind. His car passed in front of my eyes and left. I felt that he hadn't just left. It was as if with his departure, my heart had been torn from my chest and taken with him. At that moment, I only felt regret. The next day, when I woke up, my heart was fluttering like a sparrow. My only thought was to rush to the front of the showroom. As I set up my stall, I count the minutes until Henry arrives with his car. Finally, his car appears on the street. Oh my God, my heart rate soars. At that moment, all I want to do is stand and look at him forever. He gets out of the car. As always, he looks like an arrogant and self-satisfied statue. He holds his head high and pays attention to no one. He walks straight into the showroom. He doesn't even glance in my direction. This arrogance and indifference somehow attract me more. A few more days pass. My life is the same every day. Henry comes and goes. I secretly keep an eye on him. A dual feeling has formed inside me. I'm happy because I can see him every day. This is the greatest joy of my life. But I'm sad because I know where I am and where he is. I know that I will never, ever be able to be by his side. This distance between us is like a tall wall that only I can see. Night falls. After packing up my stall, I return home exhausted, but physical exhaustion is nothing compared to my spiritual fatigue. I go straight into my bedroom. I sit on the floor. Right there, my suppressed cry breaks, and I start weeping. I cry so much that I feel like I'm shedding all the tears in the world. This pain is the pain of not having Henry. The pain of knowing that he will never notice my existence. My mother, hearing my crying, worriedly enters the room. She comes and sits beside me and holds me in her arms. With a trembling voice, she asks, "My daughter, what's wrong? Why are you tormenting yourself like this?" I can't take it anymore. I tell her the whole story, that I've been in love with a rich man for a few days, the owner of the car showroom I sell in front of. I tell her that I'm happy to see him every day. But I'm dying inside because I know how poor I am and that I can never be with him. My mother, with a deep sigh, strokes my head. She confirms my words. It's like a sledgehammer hitting me. She says, "My daughter, I understand. But you know who we are and who that man is. You're a street vendor and he's living in luxury. Because of this class gap, you can never be together. My dear, please forget him forever." But how can I forget him? He has become like breathing to me. Crying, I tell my mother, I can't, mother. I swear I can't. I've truly fallen in love with him. My mother, seeing that insistence is useless, suggests another way. She tells me, then if you can't forget him, at least go change your vending spot tomorrow. Go work somewhere else so you don't see Henry anymore. Distance and not seeing him will eventually make him fade from your mind. Her words are logical. Bitter, but logical. The next day, I wake up with a heavy heart. Although not seeing Henry is harder than death for me, I know I have no other choice. I must forget him. I pack my things and go to another place, another busy street, far from Henry's showroom. A few hours pass. All my thoughts are with Henry. It's as if every sound I hear is the sound of his footsteps. Every passing car, I think it's his car. Not seeing him has become a mental torture. I suffer so much that I finally can't bear it anymore. My heart commands me, go back. Ignoring my mother's words and the promises I made to myself, I quickly gather my belongings. I run the whole way in anxiety and haste. I must see him again. I return to the front of his showroom and set up my stall. Seeing that place, next to that showroom, even if he doesn't see me, feels like peace. Several more days pass, and Henry's love takes root in me like an incurable disease. Seeing him every day is no longer enough. I have to talk to him. Even a simple word. This silence is killing me. This distance is suffocating me. But how? How can I get close to him? He has drawn an invisible wall around himself that only rich people can cross. I must act. I have to pretend to be a well-off person who is on par with his showroom. I pack up my stall early and anxiously head toward the boutique where my friend, Sarah, works as a salesperson. As soon as Sarah sees me, she asks, "What's wrong, Jenny? Why are you so rushed and worried?" I take her hand and, with eyes full of pleading, tell her the story. I beg her to lend me a chic and expensive evening dress from the store, just for half an hour. I explain to her that I want to go to Henry's showroom and say I want to buy a car, just so I can talk to him. Sarah panics. She says, "Jenny, are you crazy? Do you know if the owner finds out, he'll kill me? I'll definitely be fired." I insist so much and tell her this is my last chance that her heart finally softens. She secretly gives me a stunningly beautiful evening dress that I know costs my entire year's income. With worried eyes, she tells me, "I swear if there's the slightest snag on it, I'm ruined. As soon as you're done talking, rush back and return it." I put on the dress. When I look in the mirror, I'm like a different person. I'm no longer the street vendor Jenny. I'm a woman who could be Henry's customer. My heart pounds. I'm anxious, but the excitement of seeing Henry takes over. In that borrowed dress, I go towards his showroom. I open the glass door and enter. The atmosphere of the showroom is calm and luxurious. I see Henry sitting behind his desk. As soon as my eyes meet his, the world spins around me. My heart, it feels like its rhythm has stopped. I feel like the blood in my veins has frozen, and I've turned into a statue. I become so absorbed in his beauty that I freeze right there. Henry notices my presence and approaches with his usual arrogance. A professional smile is on his lips. I try to stay calm too. On the pretext of buying a car, I start talking. Henry, with complete precision and mastery, begins to explain the features and options of the car. With his deep and attractive voice, he talks about the engine power and the car's special features. But me, I don't understand anything he's saying. I'm only watching his lips move and his eyes smile. My goal is to stay by his side for as long as possible with continuous questions. I ask and ask while my attention is not on his answers at all. I'm absorbed in gazing at Henry's beauty. We were talking for a few sweet minutes, which passed like a few seconds for me, when suddenly one of the showroom employees, who was responsible for cleaning, enters the hall. As his eyes fall on me, he suddenly stops with great surprise and an open mouth. My heart trembles in my chest again. My God, has he recognized me? Henry, with a puzzled look, turns to his employee and asks, "What's wrong? Why are you staring like that?" Worry and anxiety consume my entire being. If he tells Henry who I am, what will happen to me? Before I could say anything, the employee, with a voice that echoed in the hall, revealed the bitter truth. "Sir, this is the same street vendor who sets up her stall in front of your showroom every day and sells small items." Henry, his eyes blaze with anger. All that fake professional smile on his face vanishes, replaced by a terrifying rage. He feels tricked. He starts yelling. He insults me with ugly words. With the utmost arrogance and pride, he mocks my poverty and humiliates me. Humiliation. This word, from the mouth of the person you love, settles like a knife in your heart. Tears stream uncontrollably from my eyes. I plead, but it's no use. Henry, with even more pride, humiliates me further. Then he pushes me with all his might. I'm thrown out of the showroom. I fall to the ground on my knees and hands. A sharp pain shoots through my leg, but that's not my first thought. My eyes fall on the borrowed evening dress. A piece of the hem was torn during my fall. Oh no, I'm more upset about my friend's torn dress than my injured leg. I know this is just the beginning of my misfortune. I get up from the ground. Shame and fear are worse than the pain in my leg. I must return to the boutique as soon as possible. Limping, I make my way to the boutique. My friend, Sarah, as soon as she sees me, asks with worried eyes before I can speak, "What happened to the dress, Jenny?" With a voice trembling with embarrassment, I show her the dress. The torn part was very noticeable. I say, "Sarah, he pushed me out. I'm sorry, I couldn't be careful." Sarah puts her hands over her mouth. Her face is white as chalk. She starts crying. She knows her job is over. She asks me why Henry did this, and I tell her the whole story of the humiliation and the role-playing. She just shakes her head and cries. Right at that moment of terror, the boutique door opens and the owner walks in. A harsh man around 50 years old. His eyes fall directly on the torn dress in my hand. It's as if the world has collapsed on him. Without pausing, he starts screaming. His face was red with anger. He attacks Sarah. "By what right did you give this expensive dress to her? Do you know how much this costs?" No matter how much Sarah pleads and says she will compensate, it's no use. The boutique owner says one word: "Fired. Get out of here forever." My heart aches. Because of my folly and fruitless love, my best friend lost her job. Then it's my turn. He turns to me and says in a voice stronger than ever, "You have to pay for this dress. $3,000, right now." $3,000. This figure is like a mountain for me, the street vendor. I beg him that I don't have it, that I'm poor. The boutique owner has no pity at all. He says, "I don't care. I'll give you a few days. If you don't pay the money, I know how to find you, and I will file a complaint." His threat was like a death sentence. Limping and with a heart full of sorrow and grief, I return home. This time, in the bedroom, my crying is different. I'm crying for 3 reasons: Henry's humiliation, Sarah's firing, and the huge $3,000 debt. My mother comes in, sees how distressed I am. She quickly asks why I'm so distraught. But I can't tell her that I got Sarah fired, and I have to pay $3,000. The poor woman has enough problems of her own. I don't want to worry her. I give a bitter smile and lie. "Nothing happened, Mother. I just couldn't forget Henry. I'm still thinking of him, and it's killing me." My mother embraces me sadly, thinking my only problem is love, while my problem had now become a real crisis. The next day, with all that pain and debt, I still went to the front of Henry's showroom. I was selling, but all my attention was on the showroom entrance. Henry's car appears from a distance, but my heart sinks. He's not alone. Veronica is sitting next to him, a woman with beautiful colored hair, expensive clothes, and a face that glows with happiness. From the first glance, I know who she is. The rich girl Henry is in love with and is going to marry. Seeing them together is agony. I feel like my whole being is melting like a candle from the intensity of the suffering. Henry and Veronica enter the showroom with a smile. I try to get back to work, but I can't. After a few minutes, I can't take it anymore. I peek secretly from the corner of the window display. I see the two of them sitting together, laughing loudly and talking. Veronica's laughter is like a dagger in my heart. I feel like my heart is being crushed in my chest. I can't stay anymore. I don't have the patience to sell. I pack up my stall and go home. I cry and suffer so much in my room that my physical health really deteriorates. I feel weak and dizzy. My mother, seeing that I am pale and struggling to breathe, panics. She immediately calls an ambulance. The ambulance comes and transfers me to the hospital. In the emergency room, all that time, even with the IV drip in my arm, I'm thinking about Henry and Veronica. A few hours later, I feel better. The doctor says it was due to a nervous shock and physical weakness. Finally, I'm discharged from the hospital and return home with my mother, who is still worried and anxious. Now, besides the debt, illness has been added to my misfortunes. Now, all my thoughts are about that $3,000 debt. The 3-day deadline the boutique owner gave me passes like lightning. On the 3rd day, my phone rings. It's the harsh, demanding voice of the boutique owner saying, "3 days are over. Where's the money for the dress?" My voice trembles with pleading. "Sir, please, give me a little more time. I'm poor. This money doesn't fall from the sky. I beg you, give me 1 more week. Just 1 week." I insist and swear so much that he finally reluctantly agrees. 1 week. I have only 1 week to gather $3,000. I start chasing money. I call every old friend and acquaintance I have. I plead. I explain. But no one lends a street vendor, even a friend, $3,000. Everyone says, "Sorry, we don't have it," or "How can you pay it back?" My efforts fail one by one, and the prison wall closes in on me day by day. Days pass. I'm financially ruined, emotionally devastated. I set up my stall in front of Henry's showroom again. As I organize my items, a stunning luxury car appears from a distance. Yes, it's Veronica, the rich girl who was supposed to marry Henry. She pulls up right in front of Henry's showroom door. I follow them with my eyes. Veronica gets out, and Henry approaches with a smile. And here, my heart breaks forever. Henry, the same arrogant man who humiliated me, now embraces Veronica. Right in front of my eyes, he expresses his affection to her with all his heart. Seeing this scene is like someone is pulling my soul out of my body. The pain is so deep that I feel like I might faint at any moment. I just cry, and I can't catch my breath. A few hours pass. They finally come out of the showroom. They get into Henry's expensive car and drive away. I can't bear it anymore. I have to know where they are going. I have to know how their life is going. This is a kind of disease that I have to see through to the end. I quickly gather my belongings and throw them into my big bag. I run into the street and hail a taxi. With excitement and anxiety, I tell the driver, "Follow that car, faster." The driver initially refuses. He says, "Madam, I don't have the patience for trouble," and chases. I realize if I tell him the truth, I'll lose them. I have to win him over. With tears in my eyes, I resort to a big lie. I plead, "Sir, I swear that man, is my husband. I just found out he cheated on me and is in a relationship with that girl. Please have pity on me. I have to find out where they are going." The taxi driver, seeing my tears and distressed state, takes pity on me. His expression softens, and he says, "Of course, madam, calm down. We'll follow them." Henry's car stops in front of a chic, classy cafe. My driver stops a distance behind them. Henry and Veronica go inside. I quickly get out of the taxi. I tell the driver to wait and hide behind a tree, looking through the cafe windows. What I see is a surprise. Veronica has thrown a birthday party for Henry. Henry's friends are also there, and they're giving him gifts. The cafe is full of laughter and joy. I'm standing outside, under the weight of regret. How much I wished I was there too, and could congratulate the love of my life on his birthday, even with a small, insignificant gift. But I have no place in their world. I can only feel regret. A few hours later, the celebration ends. Henry's friends leave. Henry and Veronica get back into the car. I quickly get into the taxi too. The driver looks at me sympathetically and starts the chase again. Henry's car stops in front of Veronica's big, luxurious house. Veronica says goodbye to Henry and goes inside. Henry is left alone. The driver asks, "Well, where is he going next?" I say, "Follow him." Henry drives toward his mother's house. I continue to follow him in the taxi. Finally, Henry reaches the house and goes inside. I tell the driver to return to our home. That night, despite all the suffering and debt, one image was in my mind. The image of Henry's birthday and the regret that had penetrated to my very core. The next day, the sun has just come up when the doorbell rings. My heart sinks. I know who it is. It's our landlord. My mother and I are 2 months behind on rent, and the $3,000 boutique debt is also hanging over my head like a dagger. I go out fearfully. The landlord is standing at the door, furious. Without greeting us, he starts yelling. He sharply tells me that since we haven't paid rent for 2 months, we must vacate his house immediately. His tone is so harsh that it's as if we are thieves, not tenants. I plead. I say, "Please, give us a little time. We'll get the money together." But he doesn't listen at all. He firmly says that we must pack all our belongings and move somewhere else within a few days. I go inside and tell my mother the situation. The poor woman is also sad and upset upon hearing the news. We have to accept it. Now, with all this misfortune, we also have to look for a new place. Because our hands are empty and our financial situation is ruined, every place we find is either very dirty or the rent is still too high for us. After much searching and suffering, I finally find a smaller, older house that we can rent. We vacate the previous house. With 1,000 difficulties, we gather our meager belongings and move to the new house. Our poor life becomes poorer than before. The next day is a holiday. Even though I just moved and I'm exhausted, I can't stand the distance. Being away from Henry is impossible for me. I remember the address of his mother's house that I followed last night. I decide to go there. Maybe if he comes out of the house, I can see him for a moment. I also take a small, inexpensive gift that I had prepared for his birthday with me. I tell myself that even if he humiliates me, at least I'll tell him happy birthday. I stand in front of his mother's house for a few hours. My feet hurt from standing. The sun is bothering me. I'm slowly losing hope. I'm about to go back home when suddenly the door opens. Henry and a few of his friends come out. They are wearing hiking clothes. They have big backpacks on their backs. I realize they intend to go mountain climbing. This is a good opportunity. I quickly run toward them. Henry sees me and is surprised. Anger and contempt ripple in his gaze. He realizes that I followed him to find their address. Before I can say anything, he confronts me angrily and says, "What do you want here? You are no longer allowed to come near our house." Tears well up in my eyes. He is humiliating me again, but I mustn't give up. I hold out my small gift box and say, "Henry, happy birthday. I knew it was your birthday." But he doesn't take the gift from me. He looks at it proudly and repeats, "Get out of here, Jenny. I don't want this gift." I plead. My voice trembles with emotion. "Please, Henry, this is the only thing I could buy for you. I know it's very cheap and worthless, but this is all I can afford. Please accept it." Henry gives a mocking smile, a smile that crushes my heart. He says in a cold, ruthless tone, "Your cheap and worthless gift is useless to me." This sentence was like a hard slap in my face. My whole being is shattered. Henry's friends, who were standing beside him, feel sorry for me. One of them quietly tells Henry, "Henry, just take it. Let her go. This isn't right." Henry, due to the insistence of his friends, reluctantly and with an air of utmost indifference, takes the gift from my hand. He doesn't even look inside. With complete carelessness, he throws the small box into his hiking backpack. Then they get into their car and leave. I stay right there. My tears silently fall, and I watch them leave with regret. My love, my pride, and my entire being were humiliated in front of my eyes and left. After that bitter holiday when Henry indifferently threw my gift into his backpack and left, my life returned to its previous routine. Of course, I knew that he and his friends had gone mountain climbing. The next day, I go to the showroom as usual. I set up my stall, but hours pass and there's no sign of Henry. Usually, no matter how late he is, he eventually comes. I get worried. I tell myself, he must be tired because of the mountain climbing. He'll come tomorrow. The second day passes too. The showroom is open, but still, no news of Henry. Worry is turning into terror. What happened? Did something happen to him? Someone as arrogant as him would never abandon his job and not show up. Night falls. Tired and anxious, I return home. My mother and I are sitting at the dinner table, and the TV is on. The news is broadcasting. I'm not paying attention to the news at all, and I'm only thinking about where Henry is. Suddenly, the news anchor's voice freezes me. The anchor announces Henry's name and his friend's details. The news anchor: "Unfortunately, we received news that a group of mountaineers suffered an accident in the northern altitudes of the mountains surrounding the city yesterday morning and have disappeared following heavy snowfall and an avalanche. The identity of one of the missing individuals is Mr. Henry, the owner of the famous car showroom," said. My heart stops. I stop eating. The food gets stuck in my throat. I'm in shock. My mother asks me in surprise, "What's wrong, my daughter? Why are you like this?" With a voice that barely comes out, I say, "Mother, it's Henry. He's lost in the mountain." My tears stream down. All that pride and money can't help him in that mountain now. The news anchor says in a formal tone, "Unfortunately, due to the severely unfavorable weather conditions and heavy snowfall, it is currently impossible for rescue teams to enter the accident site to assist the victims." I couldn't continue. I get up from the table. The food is unappetizing. I go into the bedroom and kneel. For the first time in my life, with all my heart and tears, I pray. I ask God for that arrogant man, the man who humiliated me, to survive. The next day, I'm still in the room praying for Henry when I suddenly hear my mother's groan. I run out of the room. My mother has her hand on her heart. Her face is contorted with pain, and she can't catch her breath. In panic, I immediately call an ambulance. My mother is taken to the hospital. After many tests and checkups, the doctor approaches me with a serious face and says, "Your mother needs open heart surgery as soon as possible. If the operation is not performed, unfortunately, her life is in danger." The world collapses around me. Money. Money again. Where will I get the cost for my mother's open heart surgery? I don't even have the money for the $3,000 debt. In that distressed state, my phone rings. It's the boutique owner. The 1-week deadline he gave me is over. Pleading and swearing are useless now. He won't accept. He angrily says, "I'll put you in jail." The next day, unbelievably, due to the boutique owner's complaint, I'm taken to prison. Behind bars in that dark cell, I feel worse than ever. My sick mother is in the hospital, and I can't be by her side. Henry is missing, and there is no news of him. Through the small prison TV, I constantly follow the news of the mountain. I'm waiting for his name to be announced. I'm waiting for them to say he was rescued. Loneliness and despair have driven me to the brink of madness. Several days pass. I stay awake every night in prison. Worry for my sick mother on one hand, anxiety for Henry on the other, have stolen sleep from my eyes. The television news is constantly on. During those difficult days in the mountain, Henry has been wandering in the mountain for several days and hasn't eaten anything. Due to extreme cold and hunger, his body is drained of energy. He is lying on the frozen ground and knows he is approaching the moment of death. All his pride is broken in the mountain. He talks to God. In his heart, he says that this torment is the result of his own arrogance and selfishness. He begs God to forgive him for all his inappropriate behavior. With the last bit of will he has left, he decides to try to stand up one more time. He pulls himself up with difficulty, but his legs can't support his lifeless weight. He falls to the ground again. At that moment, his hiking backpack slips off his shoulder, and because the ground is sloped, it starts rolling down. The backpack rolls several meters down. As the backpack rolls, a small object falls out of it. A small gift-wrapped box. My gift. Seeing that box, Henry remembers me and the humiliation of that day. He knows he might only be alive for a few more hours. He thinks to himself, "Before I die, let me at least see what this poor girl gave me." Since he no longer has the strength to walk, he painfully and struggling crawls on his chest across the snow. It feels like every centimeter takes a year. Finally, after a few minutes, he reaches the box. Before opening it, he speaks to me under his breath, a kind of confession and apology. "Jenny, forgive me. I was an arrogant and terrible person. Forgive me for humiliating you." Then, with his frozen hands, he opens the gift. In the box, there is an old, beautiful lighter and a small handwritten note. 35. Seeing the lighter, it's as if three-phase electricity connects to his body. He realizes that this lighter can save his life. He kisses the lighter several times out of sheer joy and shouts with happiness in the silence of the mountain. With a shout, he thanks me for my gift and thanks God. Then he opens the small handwritten note. He recognizes my handwriting. In that note, I had written to him with all my heart that my only possession was this lighter. And because I was poor, I couldn't buy him a more valuable gift. I had apologized for the gift being cheap and worthless, and wished him a happy birthday. Reading that handwritten note brings Henry to tears of shame and regret, ashamed of how he had humiliated this poor angel, and now that worthless gift is saving his life. Henry is revived. That lighter brings back motivation and hope. He gets up with great difficulty. With the lighter and pieces of wood around him, he builds a large fire. The warmth of the fire gives new life to his body, and he shouts with joy. After warming up well and regaining some strength, he sets out with motivation to look for food. Along the way, he finds the frozen body of an eagle. He roasts it and eats it. Thanks to my lighter, he survives for 2 more days in the mountain. He keeps himself going by eating the meat of dead animals he finds in the snow until the rescue team finally finds him. Veronica, that arrogant and rich girl, without even doubting that Henry might be alive, marries her other suitor. I said to myself, See how cheap the love of rich people is. It's worth a single mountain trip. Simultaneously with this betrayal, the rescue team finally succeeded. Although I wasn't there at that moment, I later heard the whole story in detail. Henry, in that terrible cold, hears the faint sound of the rescue helicopter. With the last of his strength, he shouts and waves his hands. The pilot was about to turn back because the weather was deteriorating again. But suddenly, the pilot notices the smoke of the fire that Henry had made with my worthless lighter. He immediately reports the issue and is instructed to move forward. The helicopter approaches the location of the smoke, and they see Henry lifelessly pointing with his hand. They rescue him. My lighter was truly an envoy of God. Henry is hospitalized for several days. After he gets a little better and is discharged from the hospital, he returns to his mother's house. First of all, he calls Veronica. Once, twice, several times, but Veronica rejects his call every time. Henry, who still didn't know Veronica had married, becomes worried. He thinks perhaps Veronica is upset with him. He goes in front of Veronica's parents' house to talk to her and tell her how much he suffered in the mountain. When he arrives in front of the house, he sees Veronica standing outside. But she is not alone. A man is beside her. Her new husband. Veronica is in her new husband's arms, and he is kissing and caressing her. Right there. Henry's pride is crushed for the second time. He realizes Veronica wasn't even willing to wait until the uncertainty of his life and death was settled. Henry stands silently in a corner and cries. Veronica, whose gaze accidentally falls, sees Henry. She is shocked. She never expected to see him alive. Veronica's husband asks why she is shocked, and Veronica quickly makes an excuse so her husband doesn't notice Henry's presence. Henry's heart is more broken than before. He decides to forget Veronica forever. Without saying a word, still crying silently, he leaves the place. At that moment, he is alone. His wealth and his fake love saved neither. Henry resumes his activity at his car showroom. But Henry was no longer the arrogant Henry he was before. That lighter had changed his heart. Henry now knew how worthy I was of love and life and had decided to marry me. But the problem was that he couldn't find me. He didn't know I was in prison. During these few days, he stood in front of his showroom every day, eager to see me. He waited for hours for me to set up my stall, but I never showed up there. One afternoon, in prison, the television was on. The news program started, and the presenter announced that they were going to interview Henry, the person who was rescued from the mountain accident. All the prisoners gathered to hear the story of the rescue. I, with a trembling heart, was staring at the television. Henry came in front of the camera. With tears welling up in his eyes, he began to speak. Henry said, "Everyone thinks money and wealth are the saviors. But in that mountain, all my wealth and my friends' expensive equipment did nothing to help us. My life was saved by a small gift, a lighter." Henry looked at the camera and with tear-filled eyes addressed me. "Jenny, forgive me. I know who you are now. You are my guardian angel. Jenny, if you hear my voice, please come to me. I didn't deserve you, but now I understand you are the one I need. I want to marry you." All the prisoners were silent. Tears of joy flowed from my eyes. My God, Henry, that same arrogant man, now confessed in front of the whole world that he was in love with me and wanted to marry me. Without delay, I call my dear friend, Sarah, using the prison phone. I excitedly tell her the whole story and ask her to rush to Henry and tell him where I am, to tell him that I am in prison because of the debt for her dress. Sarah goes to Henry. When Henry learns of the situation, he goes crazy. He immediately goes to the boutique owner. He immediately pays my $3,000 debt. That same day, the prison guards come for me. I was freed. Henry was waiting for me outside the prison. We hugged each other. Henry was crying and desperately asking me to forgive him. From then on, my life completely changed. Henry not only paid my debt, but also covered all the costs for my mother's treatment and open-heart surgery. My mother had the surgery and recovered. Henry bought a luxurious and expensive car for my mother and me, and he also bought a big house for my mother so she wouldn't be a tenant anymore. Then, Henry and I got married. He held a magnificent and dreamy wedding ceremony for me. I, Jenny the street vendor, was now Henry's wife. At the wedding ceremony, Henry gave me another small, gift-wrapped present. I opened the box. Inside was a lighter. The lighter Henry gave me was different from mine. My lighter was old and simple, but Henry's lighter was made entirely of gold and was incredibly expensive. This gift was a sign that he now understood the value of my simple lighter of love, a lighter that saved his life and proved that true love and help are priceless.
All the stories I share on my channel are written by me, and unlike other YouTube channels, they are not copied. So I would appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to my channel to motivate me to write new stories.